In response to the Aubrey Marcus video, those of you who know about it, I have stopped following Aubrey Marcus. I would say maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the first time I heard the shadow say, "Oh, we're in a sacred union, but we are, sleeping with other people." I immediately unfollowed, unsubscribed, and lost respect, truly, to be honest with you. He is still a leader in the spiritual community, and I am furious anytime I see leaders within the spiritual community full of shit and full of manipulation and spiritual bypassing and toxicity, because they are leading the next generation of our people. And I really hope that this intense shadow that they have portrayed to all of us so publicly is going to be, and I really do see it. It is, I see the positive in this, and I see it tipping so much, the toxicity and the spiritual bypassing, tipping so much to the toxic side and to the shadow side that a lot of people are going to awaken from this, and a lot of people are going to fall into the trap, but a lot of people are going to awaken from this. And I truly honor the people who are speaking up right now. Talking about speaking up. And so I want to speak about this too, because as a sex priestess, I am sick and tired and absolutely disgusted, if I'm honest with you, from all of this bullshit. I couldn't even watch the video, to be honest with you, like for even 3 minutes. My friend sent it to me, and I immediately saw the energy field of Aubrey Marcus and his 2 women, and I couldn't even continue watching it. I knew exactly what they were going to say, and then I heard the spiel from friends and people, and I've already heard this bullshit so many times, but this time it's gone way too far, and we really need to discuss this. So this is what I saw in their energy field, and what I saw and what I heard from their words in the few moments that I did listen. It's not leadership. It is absolute spiritual bypassing and absolute manipulation. And what I saw was not sacred. It was gaslighting on a massive scale for the entire community that follows and listens to him. It was an invitation to join him in his shadow instead of authentic evolution. Sacred masculine is not about performance. It's about integrity. And integrity doesn't hide behind poetic language, like Aubrey Marcus is very, very good at. We're done mistaking charisma for truth. All right. This is my perspective of as a sex priestess and a psychedelic witch who has given her life to truth, as well as I work in the psychedelic field. And so I'm going to talk about a lot of things that I see in what is happening right now, not just because of this talk, but in our collective consciousness, especially in the spiritual community. So the spiritual community really loves the buzzwords, right? Like radical monogamy, sacred union, conscious uncoupling, all wrapped in this glittering Instagram filters, cacao ceremonies, and tantric eye-gazing workshops. But beneath the veil of poetic language, there is a rot, a deep spiritual bypassing masked as liberation. Let's talk about this latest podcast from Aubrey Marcus and Violana. Let's talk about the ongoing distortion in the so-called conscious community that is pushing the idea that sleeping with multiple people while in partnership is someone higher form of love. And they say it's a radical monogamy now, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And they call it sacred. And I am done being silent about people who call things sacred and use the word sacred union, especially after I started my work about 10 years ago, and I spoke about sex magic, and no one spoke about sex magic. No one said the word sex priestess. And then all of a sudden, all these women talk about sex magic and sex priestess, and they go sleep with people, and they go distort people's sacred unions and disguise themselves as spiritual being. This is bullshit. This is toxic. This is horrible. This is I will not stand for that. You cannot call yourself a sex priestess if you're going to sleep around with other people, especially someone's husband. And you cannot call this a sacred union if you're sleeping around with other people. So I am going to go on a tantrum. If you don't like it, please do not watch, because I am not a fluffy person. I was born and raised in Israel, and we do not talk fluff. We say it as it is. And that's one of the gifts I'm very grateful for my ancestors that I have received. And I will not stand for this. So let's get this straight. A true divine masculine king will never want his woman to sleep with another man. Okay, let's start with that. He does not crave control out of ego. He claims her because she desires and yearns to be claimed. That claim is sacred, honoring her essence, her power, and her fullness. That is the feminine yearning, which I write all about it in my 700-page book, the Sex Priestess Manual. A true divine queen, she will never allow the desecration of her vessel. All right. No matter how many crowns a man can wear, no matter how loudly he calls himself a king, if he tries to break her boundaries, to fracture her sacredness, she will rise and say no. Now, claiming is not about possession. It's about mutual reverence, devotion, respect, and fierce love that honors the holiness of both partners. Anything less is a shadow performance, a spiritual bypass, dressed up as freedom, but true sovereignty protects the sacred union, always. Polyamory, in simple terms, is the practice of engaging in more than one intimate relationship at a time, with the knowledge and consent of everyone involved. Monogamy on the surface is the commitment to one romantic or sexual partner at a time. These are just basic definitions, but they are not the whole story. From an esoteric perspective, monogamy, when sacred, isn't about control or ownership. It's about becoming a vessel for divine union, a focused portal where two souls mirror, challenge, and alchemize one another into their highest selves. It's the fire of one-on-one devotion that opens the gates of spiritual mastery. Polyamory, in its sacred version, could theoretically be rooted in radical honesty and universal love, but let's be real. Most of what we see today in the spiritual world is not that. What's being marketed as liberation and evolved consciousness often masks deep fear of intimacy, avoidance of shadow work, and a refusal to surrender fully to the fire of devotion. There is a distortion, a hijacking of sacred language. People say sacred union while spreading their energy thin across multiple partners. They say freedom while avoiding the sacred crucible that real union demands. And this has consequences for our souls, our bodies, and the collective heart of humanity. This video is not fully judgment, it's a reclamation, a return to the truth of what a sacred union really is. A call back to the fire, the focus, and the holiness of real love. Now, let me tell you something. As a real sex priestess who have devoted her life to the holy mysteries of the sacred body and the spirit love and the sacred flame, this is not sacred. Nothing about what they spoke about is sacred. And they're not the only ones. There are many people in the spiritual community, especially in the last many years, that are just falling into this trap and falling into their own shadows and egos. And this has to stop. This is the hijacking of the sacred. This is exactly what the Dark Wizards have done when the temple fell. This is exactly what the Shadow Masculine has been doing for a very, very long time. This is how dark forces work. They take what is most holy, okay, most pure, most divine, and then they twist it just slightly so that it looks beautiful on the outside, while its core, it's infected with confusion, avoidance, and ego. A sacred union is not something you casually open. All right? A sacred union opens you. Listen to that. A sacred union opens you. It shatters you. It rearranges your soul. It brings every shadow into the light. The parts of you that lust for freedom, the parts that sabotage connection, the parts that fear true intimacy. And in the holy fire of that crucible, you are transformed not through fragmentation, but through devotion. Absolute devotion. And rising each other up, rising you and your partner up. So, let me continue. So, a real sex priestess is not someone who sleeps with many people. A real sex priestess is the guardian of the holy flame and the sacred union. We are the guardians of that. When I work with couples and sacred ceremonies, I don't come as like, oh, look at me, I'm a sexy sex priestess and I'm gonna like hit on your husband and I'm gonna, no. I absolutely freaking not. And I see women who call themselves sex priestesses who do that, and I have zero respect for you. Zero respect. You have zero integrity, and this is not what you do. A sex priestess is here to transmute the shadows of humanity into light and to empower the sacred union of couples. All I do and all I'm devoted to is to bring these couples in a sacred union together and strengthen their sacred union, strengthen their love and devotion to each other. A real sex priestess knows that every time two bodies unite, a portal opens, and what enters that portal affects not just the lovers, it ripples into the timeline of the children, of the earth, of humanity itself. To treat that power with anything less than reverence is not liberation, it's spiritual adolescence. And again, I will not put up with that. We are not here to perform freedom. We are here to embody divine truth. There is nothing inherently wrong with people choosing open relationships, if that is what their soul is aligned to, and that's the journey that their soul chose to grow and evolve from. All right, there are a few people like that, but don't confuse that with a sacred union, and don't call it a sacred union. At least I will respect you if you say, I just want to sleep around and be in an open relationship. I will have so much respect for you. And I will not have respect for someone, oh, I'm in a sacred union and I'm free and loving and feeling my love with everyone, putting these beautiful spiritual words on just basically you want to fuck everyone. All right? Don't do that. At least be in integrity. At least be authentic. Authenticity is stronger than love. And we need more authenticity today. So don't confuse that with a sacred union. Again, sacred union is a path of initiation, not indulgence. It requires monogamy of the soul, not necessarily from fear-based rules, but from the sheer magnitude of presence and purpose that such a union demands, because a sacred union has a purpose. Sacred union is where two become one without losing their sovereignty. It's not about ownership. It's not about fear. It's not about control, but it is about sacred responsibility. To be chosen, to choose again and again and again and again, not because it's easy, but because it's holy, because you want to live in that devotion. We are in an era where one of humanity's most powerful codes, the code of divine union, is being distorted and glamorized into polyamory without depth, sex without anchoring, and love without backbone. That ends now. I will not be silent anymore. I am here as a priestess of the holy flame and of the original temple of Isis and Lilith. And to hear that Marcus speaks the name of Isis, saying that he heard he got a message from God or Isis or whatever, that he needs to do this, and he needs to impregnate these women. I have a message from God too, Marcus. You owe me $2 million. Are you serious with me? Now, I am here to remind you that the original codes of sacred union were born from the stars. That the alchemy of divine masculine and divine feminine is not a lifestyle, and it's not a beautiful Instagram post. It is a soul agreement written before time. It is meant to birth heaven into earth, not trauma into chaos. Stop calling it sacred if it's not anchored in God. Stop calling it freedom if you're running from depth. Stop calling it union if you're sleeping with the world while abandoning the temple of your woman. This is not judgment. This is a reckoning. Let the real priestesses rise and reclaim the sanctity of divine love. Let the holy men rise and remember the honor of being the masculine pole to a woman's sacred current. Let us bring back the truth of what sacred union was, always meant to be, a flame so holy, so sacred, it purifies everything that it touches, especially the shadows and the ego. Enough with the distortion. Let's return to the temple. Let's tell the truth, beloveds. We've been told that our nature is wild, open, free, ever expanding, that we must have many lovers to taste the fullness of love. But that is wholly one layer of the truth, and often the most wounded one. Our deepest nature is not scattered. It is focused, it is devoted, it is monogamous at the soul level. The real truth is that the sacred union, when fully surrendered to, becomes a living temple that awakens every dormant part of you. It cracks you open to God. It burns your ego to the ground. It shows you everything you should avoid and you would avoid by spreading your energy wide. To be in a sacred union is to die and to be reborn again
in love again and again and again with the same soul. It's not about comfort. It's not about ownership. It's not even about happiness. It's about evolution. Monogamy, when conscious, is not a prison. It is a crucible of liberation, true liberation. It is the fire that tempers the steel of your soul. You want to evolve? Then let yourself be pierced by one presence. Let yourself be seen by one soul so deeply that your shadows have nowhere left to hide. That is the path of real power. That is the path of God and the Divine Mother.
Now, let me go on a rampage about the false prophet, all right? We are witnessing here, in this case, in my view, is not the embodiment of a true king like he claims to be. Not the sacred masculine, and definitely not divine leadership. This is the face of the false prophet. The wounded masculine cloaked in spiritual language, pretending to lead from love and vision, but in reality operating from control, ego, and unhealed pain. He speaks of wanting his women to lean into him and to surrender to his masculine leadership, to trust his vision. But true surrender cannot exist without safety. And there is no safety, for the woman especially, when the foundation is falsehood. Behind the soft words and seductive teachings, there is huge manipulation. There is psychological control, and there is spiritual distortion. This dynamic isn't just impacting the women directly involved, his two women, or maybe more. It's imprinting something much deeper into the feminine psyche. A trauma that says, you will be adored only if you obey. You will be worshipped, but not truly free. You will be chosen, but only to serve his highest narrative. And now children are being brought into this space, which is absolutely insanity to me, into a distorted field where trauma, confusion, and unprocessed shadows are disguised as divine creation. This is how generational pain is seeded once again. This is how the feminine is betrayed once again. This is how spiritual communities get misled by charisma without integrity, by power without humility, and by teachings without truth, absolute truth. This is why we must reclaim our discernment, people. Because real divine masculine energy doesn't demand surrender. It earns it through presence, through love, integrity, obviously, and through the protection of the feminine soul. The protection of the feminine soul. Nothing about what he does and how he speaks protects his woman and his beloved. Nothing. It's pure manipulation. And I'm going to talk about what I see in her in a very short time. A true king doesn't need to control. A true prophet doesn't need to prove. And a true spiritual leader knows he's not God. He's only a vessel like the rest of us. We must call this out, not from hatred, but from love. Love for the women who are suffering beneath the illusion. Love for the children who deserve better, who might come into this equation. And love for our community, which needs clarity more than charisma. Remember, we need authenticity more than love at this point. This is a wake-up call. This is a huge wake-up call, not just for Aubrey and its women, but for all of our community and for all of humanity. The false prophet wears many masks, and it's time to see right through them. And we need also to talk about the misuse of psychedelics, especially in spiritual leadership. Psychedelics are not toys, all right? I work with psychedelics. I am a psychedelic witch. I completely transform people's lives very quickly with psychedelics, but I do it in the right way. I do it with integrity. I do it because I know how to work with the subconscious mind, and I don't manipulate the subconscious mind. I work with it in order to evolve beyond the shadows. Psychedelics are not tools to justify ego-driven decisions or bypass responsibility. They are sacred medicines meant to be approached with reverence, deep preparation, and an integrated vessel. That is so fucking vital. 99.9% of people do not know how to use medicine today. And it pisses me off because they're creating more trauma, more chaos. And everyone who does, drugs one time, they're like, oh, I am enlightened. I am a shaman and I can go facilitate for other people. That is bullshit. That is bullshit, and it is very dangerous. And I'm seeing the danger, and I am very worried for our collective consciousness right now. I know that it's going to shift. I know that the medicine itself is stronger and the truth is stronger than anything and all the people's ego. And I know eventually it will reach a point that everything will collapse and only the true healers are going to stay and are going to remain. but it is a shit show right now. Let me tell you, it is a shit show in the medicine world. All right, so when someone uses these powerful plant teachers without fully meeting and integrating their shadows, they open the door to distortion. And that distortion can come disguised as divinity. In this case, we hear of a man who claims he received a message from God during a psychedelic journey to impregnate 2 women, his wife and another very young woman that they found. And rather than question the shadow motivations behind such a vision, he uses it to justify creating a chaotic family structure cloaked in spiritual righteousness. But let's be real. If the vessel is not pure, the message is not clean. If the ego is still holding the reins, the guidance is not divine. And if your decisions are causing suffering to your closest partner, they are not coming from a place of love, but control. Now, when children are conceived inside a spiritually distorted, imbalanced, and ungrounded relationship, they don't just inherit DNA. They inherit the chaos, they inherit the shadows, they inherit the trauma, and they inherit the karma. This is how generational trauma is seeded under the illusion of enlightenment. And I really hope these women wake up before they choose to go on with this facade. True sacred medicine work requires accountability, not just intuition. It demands you clean your vessel before you speak as God. It requires a level of humility that says, maybe this is my shadow speaking. Maybe this is my wound, my desire, my unhealed masculine, not divine will. This isn't just about his choices anymore. It's about the children coming into this world through a fragmented field. It's about the women being psychologically and psychically and emotionally manipulated under the guise of sacred union. And it's about the spiritual community waking the fuck up and learning the difference between true divine guidance and unprocessed shadow playing God.
There's something that needs to be said about what happens when power, psychedelics, and spiritual leadership intersect. In expanded state of consciousness, especially under the influence of strong plant medicine, it's possible to feel the presence of God, to merge with the all, to feel infinite. And that is a beautiful sacred experience when held with humility and truth. But for some, especially those with power, influence, and unhealed ego structures, that sensation can distort, and usually does. They begin to believe they are the voice of God, that their visions are unquestionable truths, that their desires and deep shadows are divine commandments, that questioning them is heresy. This is the birth of a spiritual God complex, and it is incredibly dangerous. Because while their intentions may have once been pure, they are now leading from a place of unchecked power, justified by altered state visions and the devotion of followers who may be too afraid or too enamored to call it out. But here's the truth. No one is the voice of God. We are all parts of God. We each carry a thread of the divine, and that means no single being has the right to override another's truth, autonomy, and sovereignty, no matter how many followers they have, no matter how many ceremonies they've led. As a community, it's our sacred responsibility to lovingly hold up the mirror when we see this happening, to speak truth even when it's uncomfortable, to help our leaders remember that they are not above the law of cause and effect, and that they are not immune to the shadow, and that even the most powerful healers or teachers must be held accountable, especially when children, families, and lives are at stake. Because when a God complex takes root in a person with power, it creates spiritual chaos. It distorts teachings. It fractures communities. It seeds trauma in the name of transcendence. We need to return to a leadership model where power is held with humility, where vision is grounded in ethics, and where everyone, not just a leader, has a voice. Because true spiritual evolution is not about becoming a God. It's about remembering we are all divine and no one is above the rest.
All right, now let's talk about power structures that we see in this dynamic. And again, this is just one example. This is happening a lot in the spiritual community. The illusion of the divine masculine king. All right, let's talk about the divine masculine king persona that men like Marcus project. And let me tell you one thing. A real king, a true king, is not going to call himself a king. Let's just put it out there, all right? So Marcus speaks of being a king, treating his women like a queen, offering her freedom, devotion, and care. But what's often missed, and what conscious women do feel, is the invisible grip of control. Because when you peel back the language, you can see the structure is anything but equal. He holds the emotional and financial reins. He speaks of freedom, but orchestrates her world behind the veil of masculine leadership, which is a very false leadership and very toxic leadership. He uses spiritual language to cover psychological control. That's not divine masculine. And we've all heard her story from the past, and we know that she's with true love and respect for you, Vailana. We see your pain, and we see that you have been with very toxic men. We see that you haven't been in your full power in any relationship, including with Marcus, and you are just allowing another man to basically play you as a doll, do with you as he will. And you're playing into that spiritual facade persona, and it's very sad. Like, I literally want to hug you and I want to take you away from there. I know that you think I'm crazy, and I know that you think I'm maybe a bitch, but that's what I feel. So that's not divine masculine. That's manipulation dressed in Tantra robes. And we see that all the time. And teaching and having a sex magic school, I see it in the Tantra world all the freaking time. You have to be very careful who you allow to teach you about sacred sexuality and to enter your field when it comes to practicing sacred sexuality. It is a very distorted world, unfortunately. So, the shadow and the dark forces have infiltrated the spiritual community for many years, and they are doing a fine job, let me tell you that. He claims, so let's go back to this story. So he claims she can do whatever she pleases, but in reality, he sets the tone, the boundaries, and the rules that they play. And if she dares to step outside that invisible perimeter, the love gets colder, the support weakens, the safety dissolves, and that happens in a very subtle way that I know that only she feels deep down subconsciously, not even consciously, because he's very, very good manipulator. He knows how to use words very well. And let me tell you, I know that this man had very good intentions in the beginning. I have no doubt. He had very, very good intentions, but he got really lost, and that's very sad to me, because he's still a leader, and people still look up to him, and he's guiding so many people into their own shadows instead of evolving. A true king, a truly embodied divine masculine, will stand by his woman, not just when she smiles for the camera, but when she cries in the dark. He will protect her soul before he protects his ego. He will create space for her truth, even if it challenges his desires. And any conscious woman can see, come on, people, that Violana's pain is very visible beneath the performance. In many of the videos, not just this video. I've seen it for years. And her smile doesn't reach her eyes. It's the smile of someone who has learned to survive inside a power structure that praises her devotion but punish her sovereignty. And we need to stop romanticizing spiritual men who say all the right things but embody the same old patriarchal control. That is my accent. I'm sorry, guys. With prettier words and polished rituals. All right? Because this is not sacred union. It's still hierarchy and it's still toxicity, just with incense and better lighting. This must stop. Now, I want to say to Aubrey and Vailana, I pray for you both. I am, you both chose to do this publicly, and with that comes both blessing and consequences. This is not a projection, this is a reflection, and I hope that you have the courage to listen deeply to me and all the other people in the community who are putting a mirror in front of your face right now, and not only to praise, but to pain. And I really do pray that you find your clarity, not just beautiful affirmations. And I pray that the reflections you're receiving from the collective right now are received with humility and not defensiveness. And may you use this moment to grow and self-inquire and to realign with the purest source within. And I hope that we all do that, because I am grateful for the mirror they gave all of us right now to really observe the shadows that we all hold and that the collective holds, and that and putting new boundaries. And what are we going to put up with? Are we going to allow this shit show to go on? Or are we going to fight for true sacredness and truth and our divinity and the real sacred union? So I just do not like lies. I have given my life to the Divine Mother. These are a lot of my blood magic, that tattoos say that. And I've given my soul to truth. And I have given my mission to empower the sacred union. And to see people who completely disagree the name and the words sacred union, it is the most disgusting thing to me. And I will not have it anymore. So thank you for listening. I am a priestess of the temple. I am a servant of the mother. And I am a psychedelic witch. And I pray for the true evolution of humanity and the true awakening of sacred union. Thank you so much.
Please subscribe, like, and share so I can continue making these videos and share the work of the temple. And may the goddess bless you all.